Hello and welcome to this video about matrix multiplication. I have made this video to try to give you some understanding of what matrix multiplication actually is. It isn't really just a convention, but it corresponds to an actual reality about matrices. If you can just see things a little bit differently, you can start to build up an intuition as to how and why it works. So matrices were made to help us solve these sorts of simultaneous equations, and with more variables like 3, 4, 5, or even 100 variables. But we'll start off with 2. This equation can be packed up into this matrix equation. A matrix can be treated like a number in its own right, with addition, multiplication, and other operations corresponding to real numbers. When we multiply this matrix equation out, we'll get this matrix equation, which is the equality of two vectors. It looks nearly identical to the first set of equations, but this is one equation with one equal sign. So here is an example of how to multiply two matrices together. We multiply the top row of the first matrix by the first column of the second matrix to get this entry in the top left-hand corner. Then we multiply the top row and second column together to get this entry circled in red. Then we multiply the bottom row by the first column to get this next entry. And finally, multiplying these rows and columns together gives us this last entry. After evaluating all of these expressions, we get this matrix, being the product of these other two matrices. Matrix multiplication can be easily done with the computer. So now to look at what matrix multiplication actually is, by evaluating this expression in two different orders. In this case, we multiply the first two matrices together to give us this matrix, which simplifies to be this. And so this is the final product of these matrices, looking more like an equation than a matrix, because the last matrix, which was a column vector, contained variables instead of numbers. So now we can multiply the last two matrices first to give us this matrix expression. Multiplying these two matrices together gives us this vector, and then we can expand this out to give us this horrible looking expression. We can then gather all of the variables of the same type together, that is, gathering all of the x's together and y's together. We can simplify these expressions so that the variables are outside the brackets. We can already see here what looks like matrix multiplication, which naturally occurred when we multiplied a matrix by a vector containing variables. I've circled expressions that occur in the matrix products. And so this expression is the same. This exercise shows that matrix multiplication is distributive, but I also hope that it shows why it is defined the way that it is. Now to look at matrix multiplication again, but in 3 by 3 matrices. Here is a set of linear equations of 3 variables. You couldn't solve this using methods used to solve linear equations using 2 variables. You'd have to use matrices. This set of 3 equations could be packed up into this one matrix equation, and multiplying it out gives this vector equation, which looks nearly identical to the first set of 3 equations. Now to multiply these two matrices together, I'm going to focus on the product of this row and column. This is the product of these two matrices. This row and column multiply together like this to give this particular entry. And so this product simplifies to be this matrix. Now to look at the product of these 3 matrices. we're going to firstly multiply the first two matrices together first, and then the matrix by the vector first. Multiplying the two matrices together first gives us this matrix, and multiplying this matrix by this vector gives us this vector. Then multiplying the matrix by the vector containing variables first gives us this expression. Performing the second multiplication gives us this complicated expression. Gathering like terms together gives us this expression, which looks like matrix multiplication. And so we get this vector product, which is the same as that above. So I hope that you can see matrix multiplication in this, even if only a hint of it. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video and learnt something from it. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you thought it was helpful and interesting, and please leave all of your thoughts and ideas in the comments.